In this video, we'll be taking a look at 4 NBA games happening on February 5th, 2026, and providing you with free team picks and total picks for each one of those games, so 8 picks in total. Welcome back to Cash Out Sports. Let's dive right into it. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe and to click the bell icon to get notified as soon as these videos get released, so that you have more time to plan out your bets as we provide these videos on a daily basis. I can guarantee that you'll have all the important information that you'll need on these 4 NBA games after fully watching this video. One more thing before we start, if you would like to gain access to our best exclusive sports picks to take your journey to the next level, then check out our Patreon in the link down below, where we offer our best single picks, parlay picks, and much more. Now let's get started. Charlotte Hornets versus Houston Rockets. Hornets and Rockets meet on Thursday, February 5th, with Houston hosting and the spotlight right on how comfortable the home side looks in their own building. Charlotte walks into this one like that friend who has been winning every hand at the casino, full of swagger, while Houston is the sturdy house, calm, patient, and quietly confident. On the surface, it sounds simple, one team riding a long winning streak against another playing the second game of a back-to-back, and that vibe alone can make the matchup feel far tighter than the real gap between who these teams have been all season. Charlotte sits at 23-28 overall, 12-15 on the road, yet has strung together 7 straight wins and is chasing a 5th straight victory away from home, which always feels bigger than it actually is when you talk about momentum. Houston, on the other hand, comes in at 31-18 with a nasty 17-5 mark in their own arena, and the performance data that stacks behind that record looks like what you expect from a genuine playoff threat rather than a nice story. The underlying numbers paint them as a group that outscores opponents by roughly 5 points per 100 possessions, with an offense that lives near the top of the league and a defense that stays firmly in the upper tier, while Charlotte lives in that uncomfortable neighborhood where the net rating is negative and the defense leaks over a larger sample even if recent results look shiny. Oddsmakers still treat Houston as only a modest favorite at home, which basically says the market respects Charlotte's recent run enough to nudge the teams closer together on a neutral court than their full body of work really suggests. That is where the conversation starts to get interesting for a spread, because when one side is built with the structure and stability of a playoff roster and the other is leaning on a hot streak, you often get a bit of a perception tax on the favorite. Houston now has the feel of a team designed for serious games. Kevin Durant carries the scoring load at an elite clip. Alperen Sengun works as the offensive hub who can punish mismatches and find cutters, and Jabari Smith Jr. and Amen Thompson slide into those important connective roles that fill in the gaps everywhere else. That kind of hierarchy might sound simple, but in the league it really matters when you are trying to win by margin rather than just squeak out victories. Charlotte absolutely has creators. LaMelo Ball, Brandon Miller, and Miles Bridges can all get their own shot and swing a game for a stretch, which keeps this team dangerous on any given night. The bigger issue is that the season-long defensive rating, hovering around 119 points allowed per 100 possessions, still screams that this group is closer to a below-average defense that can be bent and moved around once a game slows down into half-court sets. Playoff-style possessions, long half-court sequences, late-clock actions. Those are the kinds of situations where organized, physical defenses usually squeeze out edges possession after possession. Injury-wise, the picture shapes how these patterns play out even more. Houston is missing Dorian Finney-Smith with an ankle issue, long-term big man Steven Adams, who is out for the year, and guard Fred VanVleet with a knee problem. Charlotte has a cluster of backcourt notes, with Tyus Jones, Kobe White, and Mike Conley all listed as game-time decisions for non-injury reasons, KJ Simpson dealing with a hip issue that keeps him out, and Tidjane Salahin sitting as questionable due to illness. Those statuses are current, but how the minutes break down from them will always involve some guessing, and that is where coaching tendencies and trust in certain lineups become huge. What it really means in practical terms is that Houston's creation leans even harder into that Durant, Sengun, Thompson axis, which naturally tilts them towards slower, deliberate possessions that still generate high-quality looks. Charlotte, if even 1 or 2 of those game-time decisions fall the wrong way, can suddenly find its guard depth thinner than it looked on paper a week ago, which matters a lot when you need to consistently handle pressure and stay organized late in games. That 7-game win streak from the Hornets has been powered in part by hot shooting runs and a schedule that has not always pushed them to their limits, and while that is impressive, it is also the sort of thing bettors have seen normalized countless times. Sustainability, there is a judgment call, but once you lay the full season efficiency efficiency numbers next to each other. Factor in the gap between Houston's home form and Charlotte's road form, and remember how suffocating the Rockets can be in half-court defense. The shape of this matchup tilts toward the home team slowly stretching things out rather than hanging on for dear life. As our first pick for this matchup, the Houston Rockets to cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. The total number has been sitting slightly below what you see for a typical league total, but still high enough that it assumes a decent amount of pace and shot making on both sides. Honestly, that is where a lot of people will look first. They see a team on a hot win streak and a star-driven home team, and their gut jumps straight to points. Here is the thing, when you peel back the surface layer and look at how these teams actually like to play, neither of them screams track meet. Houston lives near the bottom of the league in pace, sitting around 96 to 97 possessions per game, which firmly qualifies as slow. That deliberate style gets even more pronounced when more of the offense runs through Durant in the mid-range and Sengun at the elbows, especially with Van Vliet out, because the ball naturally sticks a bit longer and sets take more time to develop. Anyone who has watched a late-season Rockets game where Durant surveys the floor and Sengun plays quarterback from the high post knows that those possessions feel like mini chess matches more than races. Charlotte does not exactly play at a sprint on the road either. Their pace away from home hovers around 98 possessions per game, just a touch quicker than Houston but still clearly on the slower side of the spectrum. That means, even before we talk about defense, both teams enter with baked-in tendencies that trim the number of trips up and down the floor. Fewer possessions usually makes every shot feel heavier and nudges scoring downward, especially when one side can really defend. Defensively, Houston has the profile everyone talks about when they mention teams that can flirt with deep playoff runs. They allow roughly 110 points per 100 possessions and around 110 points per game, which puts them right in that top-shelf conversation on that side of the ball. Charlotte's full-season defensive picture is shakier, closer to 114 points allowed per game and about 119 per 100 possessions, yet even there the recent stretch of wins has come with a quieter storyline. Their defense has actually shown up. Over the last handful of games in that streak, the Hornets have posted defensive numbers in the low 100s per 100 possessions, which shows that when a game naturally slows, they can dig in and get stops for long stretches. Now layer in the schedule spot, and the picture gets even more interesting. Houston comes into this on the second night of a back-to-back after a physical home game against Boston, the kind of matchup that usually leaves some bruises and a little mental fatigue. Charlotte, by contrast, has had 2 days to breathe, travel, and reset. Tired legs on the favorite side tend to kill transition chances first. You see fewer quick push-ahead passes, fewer early clock pull-up threes, and more possessions where Durant walks the ball up. Sengun sets up camp at the elbow, and they grind through reads for 20 seconds before anything actually happens. Let me explain why that matters. Every extra second spent walking the ball up or resetting a pick and roll is one less chance to inflate the final score. The funny part is that recent scoring trends for Houston could trick you if you only look at surface numbers. Across their last 10 games, the combined points have landed around 221 on average, a touch higher than the current expectation. But those games include faster opponents and pockets of hot shooting that are hard to treat as the new normal. Regression back toward their slower baseline is not a wild theory. It is something that happens all the time over full seasons. Put all of that together, the naturally slow tempos, Houston's strong half-court defense, Charlotte's improved effort on that side during the win streak, a potentially shortened Hornets guard rotation, and the fatigue that usually drags on teams in a back-to-back, and this contest starts to look far more like a possession-by-possession grind than a free-flowing scoring showcase. It feels much more like a game where each bucket is earned, where runs are shorter, and where the final tally has a better chance of finishing below what the market is asking for rather than sailing past it. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. San Antonio Spurs versus Dallas Mavericks. San Antonio walks into Dallas with the shiny record, the national buzz, and the type of box score that casual fans scroll to first, while Dallas is sitting there with the kind of record you usually associate with lottery simulations instead of playoff talk. San Antonio sits at 34-16. Dallas is at 19-31, and that gap alone already nudges most people toward assuming this one should be comfortable for the road team. On the surface, it feels pretty simple, the contender versus the team that traded away a franchise icon and is now trying to figure out what the next era even looks like. The thing is, basketball does not really care about the neat story, it cares about the spot. San Antonio just emptied the tank in a gritty home win over a depleted but still pesky Oklahoma City group, then hopped on a plane and rolled into this game on the second night of a back-to-back. Dallas, for all its scars, has been sitting at home, hearing about that 4-game home skid, knowing the local talk shows and group chats are asking if this team has any pride left in front of its own fans. Sometimes that mix, the tired favorite and the restless home underdog, quietly pulls the game closer than anyone expects. San Antonio's roster looks deep when you see all the names, but the bodies available tonight tell a more fragile story. Jeremy Sochan is out with a quad issue, Lindy Waters III is out with a knee problem, David Jones-Garcia is already done for the season, and both Kelly Olynyk and Dylan Harper are dealing with their own injuries. That is a lot of size, versatility, and connective tissue missing around Victor Wembanyama and De'Aaron Fox, especially when you have already played meaningful minutes the night before. On a fresh night, their top-end talent can simply overwhelm teams, but with the legs a little heavier and the rotation a little shorter, that margin for error shrinks. Dallas is a mess on paper, but it is a very specific kind of mess. The Luka Doncic trade already flipped the franchise once, and now the Anthony Davis deal has spun the wheel again, sending him to Washington and bringing back a fresh wave of players and picks. Kyrie Irving is out recovering from knee surgery, Derek Lively II is gone for the season after foot surgery, and Dante Exum has also effectively been ruled out for the year, which sounds like a disaster until you realize this group has had time to live in that reality. They have already had to learn how to compete without the safety net of a full-strength roster. The new heartbeat in Dallas is a teenager who looks like he never got the memo about easing into the league. Cooper Flagg has already thrown up a 49-point game and followed it with more huge nights, and that is not just empty heat check stuff. That is a young star figuring out that this is his team now. Add in a veteran like Chris Middleton, freshly arrived in that big trade package, and you suddenly have a locker room that mixes wide-eyed energy with veteran self-respect, even if the rest of the depth chart looks like something put together on a trade machine. Honestly, that is the kind of combination that can be dangerous in single-game spots, especially at home, because the crowd wants a reason to believe again and the kids on the floor usually do not flinch from the moment. San Antonio still brings a scary offensive engine with Wembanyama and Fox organizing things, and on many nights that is more than enough to blow the doors off a tired or disorganized opponent. Here, though, the scheduling and the psychology tilt in a quieter direction. The Spurs know they have already taken care of business against the Thunder, they know they have a strong grip on the top of the standings, and they know they see Dallas again shortly in a different city. This sets up more like a business trip than a statement game. Get in, get the win, avoid injuries, and move on, and that kind of measured approach often leaves just enough room for an underdog to hang around, trade punches, and sneak in the back door late if needed. Dallas, for all its chaos, still has professional scorers, a rookie face of the franchise who clearly loves the stage, and a fan base that will absolutely feed off any sign of real fight. Recent results show a team that may lose, but often stays within shouting distance against better opponents, and that is the exact flavor you want when you are catching points at home. Here is the thing, this is less about Dallas suddenly being fixed and more about San Antonio being good enough to win while still leaving the window cracked for a competitive scoreline. That is how you end up leaning toward the home side to do just enough, not necessarily to shock the world, but to reward anyone who trusted that the number gave them a bit more respect than the general conversation does. As our first pick for this matchup, the Dallas Mavericks to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. San Antonio has spent this season pairing a high-ceiling offense with a defense that, while strong, still allows enough rhythm for opponents who can actually make shots. Dallas, even with all the bodies missing, has quietly turned into a team that plays faster than you would think given their record, because they almost have to lean into pace and space with the pieces they have left. You put that kind of style on the same floor and you usually do not get a slow, methodical grind. Recent nights tell the same story if you actually watch the flow, not just glance at the final score. Spurs games have featured their offense punching comfortable holes in the scoreboard, with Wembanyama and Fox triggering early offense, pull-up jumpers, and a steady diet of lobs and kickouts. Even when the defense holds firm in the big moments, they give up enough transition and early clock looks to keep totals healthy. Dallas games, on the other hand, tend to get a little chaotic. You have a rookie star willing to fire, veterans who are much more shooter than stopper at this stage, and lineups that naturally pull the game away from a slow half-court slog. That kind of chaos may frustrate coaches, but people who like points rarely complain. The injuries on both sides also nudge things toward a more open style, even if that sounds counterintuitive at first. San Antonio missing multiple key forwards and bigs means more small ball, more switching, and more possessions where someone is a step late to help at the rim or out to the corner. Dallas without Lively, and maybe without a fully healthy Daniel Gafford, loses a chunk of their traditional rim protection, which tends to turn drives that end in kickouts into drives that end in layups or fouls. That combination, a tired favorite leaning on its stars and a short-handed home team leaning on its scores, rarely adds up to a game where both sides are content trading long empty trips. There is also a simple human piece to this. People show up to this one expecting a show. You have Wembanyama on one side and Flag on the other, two names that pull social media highlights within minutes, not hours. Crowds react differently when those kinds of players get going. Every block, every pull-up, every dunk feels like gasoline on the game's tempo. Referees, consciously or not, can loosen the whistle a bit when the stars are rolling, and you suddenly get stretches where the game is just flowing, up and down, with both teams trying to answer the last big play. That does not guarantee a fireworks show, but it absolutely tilts the mood of the game toward action instead of caution. San Antonio on no rest has already shown that they can still score freely even when the legs are heavy, but heavy legs often show up more on defense than on offense, especially on the closeouts and second efforts that cut off open looks. Dallas, desperate to give its home fans something positive to hold on to in a season full of drama, has every incentive to run, to push, and to lean into a style that lets Flag and the shooters play free instead of grinding through set after set. Put all that together and you get a matchup that, emotionally and tactically, points toward a scoreboard that stays busy from tip-off to final horn. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Golden State Warriors versus Phoenix Suns. The Golden State Warriors head to the Mortgage Matchup Center to face the Phoenix Suns on Thursday, and this spot has more moving parts than it looks at first glance. Golden State is coming off losses to the Pistons and the 76ers, with the Lakers on deck, so the schedule is not exactly doing them favors right now. They have still taken 14 of their last 23 games, so the wheels have not completely come off, but the margin for error feels thinner every week. Phoenix, on the other hand, has a slightly steadier rhythm at the moment. They beat the Trailblazers, then fell to the Clippers, and they also have the 76ers up next, which is a tricky little stretch. Even so, winning 7 of their last 10 games shows they are mostly handling business when they should. That kind of recent form tends to build quiet confidence in a locker room, especially at home. The injury report really tilts the matchup before the ball even goes up. The Warriors are still missing Stephen Curry, Seth Curry, Jonathan Kuminga, and Jimmy Butler III, and that is a serious talent drain no matter how you spin it. Without Curry on the floor, their entire offensive identity shifts, and you can almost feel how much harder every half-court possession becomes. They have also been undermanned by trades and other injuries, so the supporting cast is stretched, asked to do just a bit more than it probably should. Phoenix is not perfectly healthy either. Devin Booker has been ruled out, and Jalen Green is listed as questionable, which means their scoring punch is not at full strength. Even so, Phoenix still looks closer to its normal self than Golden State does right now. They are at home, they keep stacking wins, and they have been a league-best 33-16-2 against the spread this season, which is not an accident. Teams that cover that often usually combine talent, structure, and a decent sense of how to put opponents away late, especially in their own building. Golden State has also dropped 15 games on the road, and that travel grind shows up most when a short-handed group has to keep finding energy. It is tough to keep backing a team that is missing this many key players, especially when they are walking into a loud road environment against a confident opponent. Odds makers look to be baking all of that into the number, and it is hard to argue that the Warriors deserve much benefit of the doubt here. Honestly, if both teams were fully healthy, this could turn into a tight back-and-forth game, but with Golden State so depleted, the matchup leans pretty clearly toward the home side. As our first pick for this matchup, the Phoenix Suns to win and cover the spread as favorites is our full-game side pick. The Golden State Warriors are averaging 116.2 points on 46.1% shooting and allowing 114 points on 47% shooting. They shoot 36.5% from beyond the arc and 81.2% from the free throw line, which means they can still put up points in bunches when the shots are falling. They allow 35.4% shooting from deep and grab 42.7 rebounds per game, so there is usually enough pace and enough possessions to keep the scoreboard moving. The Phoenix Suns are averaging 114.1 points on 6.1% shooting and allowing 111.7 points on 46.8% shooting. They shoot 36.8% from 3 and 79.5% from the free throw line, which keeps them in that same general offensive tier. They allow 34.6% shooting from deep and pull down 43.1 rebounds per game, so they are also involved in plenty of games where both sides get their chances. When you put those numbers side by side, you get two offenses that are comfortable on the perimeter and two defenses that are good enough to compete but not so dominant that they shut things down completely. Even with key scorers missing, the style of both teams still leans toward spacing, ball movement, and perimeter shooting, rather than grinding every possession into the floor. Games like that can sometimes start slower while new lineups settle in, then open up as rotations loosen and role players get more confident with their shots. There is also a subtle rhythm factor when these teams are coming off multiple offensive-minded opponents, like the recent meetings with the 76ers and Clippers, because it keeps the tempo habits faster than people expect. So while the injuries will shift who is taking the shots, the overall structure still points to a game where scoring chances are there, and both teams have enough shooting to turn those chances into points. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Philadelphia 76ers versus Los Angeles Lakers. The Philadelphia 76ers head into Crypto.com Arena on Thursday to face the Los Angeles Lakers, another stop on this West Coast swing that has already tested them plenty. They just took down the Warriors and the Clippers and have the Suns on deck, which is a pretty serious stretch by any standard. They have stacked 13 wins in their last 20 games, and that kind of rhythm usually does not happen by accident. The Lakers come in with a different sort of momentum, but momentum all the same. They beat the Nets, stumbled against the Knicks, and now turn around to see the Warriors next on their schedule. They have won 6 of their last 9, and that looks solid on paper, even if the context matters a bit when you look closer. One key wrinkle is health, which has been the recurring subplot with the 76ers. Joel Embiid is currently listed as questionable, and that tag always makes people nervous. But he sat out against Golden State specifically to be ready for this one. If he does his usual January thing again with around 29.7 points and 8.4 rebounds in roughly 34.1 minutes, Philadelphia gains a clear focal point on both ends. On the other side, the Lakers are expecting a full group for this matchup, and that helps their case at home, although the suspension of Jackson Hayes really bites into an already thin front line. For the first time this season, the 76ers have strung together 5 straight wins, and they are not exactly easing off the gas, even with the suspension of Paul George hanging over them. They now run into what might be their toughest task on this road swing, a Lakers team that already beat them 112-108 back in early December in Philadelphia. The twist is that the Sixers are in a much better place now compared to that first meeting, mostly because Embiid has settled in, looked comfortable, and produced at a high level without his knees becoming the story every night. During this win streak, they have posted an offensive efficiency of 129.4, which leads the league, and that type of scoring punch travels pretty well. The Lakers finally return to Crypto.com Arena after their annual Grammy trip and play their first home game in more than 2 weeks. That trip went 5 wins and 3 losses, which sounds strong, but most of the wins came against teams below 500, while the 3 losses came against the Clippers, Cavaliers, and Knicks, all teams that actually have serious postseason ambitions. That has been the recurring theme with this version of the Lakers. They handle weaker opponents, then get a little wobbly when the bar gets raised. Without Hayes, if Embiid is healthy, there is a real chance the Lakers' front line feels overmatched inside, especially over 4 quarters. There is also a bit of a situational angle here. First game back home after a long trip can be oddly tricky, and teams sometimes start flat before the legs and focus catch up. Philadelphia just used a big first quarter against the other Los Angeles team to build a double-digit cushion and cruise earlier this week, so it makes sense they lean on a similar fast start again, especially with their current offensive form. The Lakers will usually be favored at home, and in this spot they are about as healthy as they have been in a while, which naturally pulls attention their way. However, the value side still points toward Philadelphia with the points, given how consistent they have looked and how well they have performed against the number. They sit at 28-20-2 against the spread this season, and they already have 14 wins on the road, which shows they handle hostile arenas reasonably well. It would not be shocking at all if they grabbed this one outright, especially with how steady they have been for most of the year and with the way the Lakers sometimes fall into nights where the offense simply goes missing for long stretches. As our first pick for this matchup, the Philadelphia 76ers to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. Philadelphia is averaging 116.8 points on 46% shooting while allowing 115.3 points on 46.9% shooting, so their games already tend to lean toward higher totals. They hit 36% from beyond the arc and 81.4% at the free throw line, and they grab 43.8 rebounds per game, which helps extend possessions and keep the scoreboard moving. They also allow 35.4% shooting from deep, which means opponents are not exactly being shut down on the perimeter. Combine that with their recent offensive efficiency spike during the win streak, and you get a team that scores plenty and gives up enough to keep both sides involved. The Lakers bring a similar scoring pace into the picture. They are averaging 116.3 points on 49.8% shooting, which is very efficient, and they are giving up 116.2 points on 48.5% shooting. They shoot 34.9% from 3 and 76.7% from the line and pull down 41.3 rebounds per game. They allow 36.9% from deep, so their perimeter defense is also far from airtight. Put together, you have two offenses that can get to their spots, two defenses that concede clean looks, and a game environment where shooting percentages already start fairly high on both sides. If Embiid is in rhythm and punishing the interior and the Lakers respond with their usual home scoring punch, trips to the line increase, the pace can pick up, and possessions pile up into a total that leans higher rather than lower. Even with the occasional scoring drought that the Lakers fall into, their games often swing back with quick bursts of points, and that kind of volatility tends to help higher totals more often than not. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. That's all for now, so if you have any other games you would like reviewed, then leave a comment down below with the game you would like analyzed, subscribe to our channel, leave a like on this video, and we'll get to it as soon as we possibly can. We would also love to hear your opinion on the picks presented to you in this video, whether you agree or disagree with them, so leave a comment down below and do let us know.